I tried to resist you. My mind knew you were dangerous. But my heart, my stupid, stubborn, loyal heart betrayed me first. And I have never been so grateful for a betrayal in my entire life. I tried to resist my alpha. But my body betrayed me first. Before we dive into the darkness, if this story pulls at your ribs the way I think it will, hit subscribe, smash that like button, and share it with someone who needs to know that even betrayal can be a doorway. Now, let's bleed a little. Part 1. The Law of Teeth and Ash. The night my alpha chose another woman. My wolf didn't howl. She went silent. And that silence was the most terrifying sound I have ever heard. You need to understand what silence means in a werewolf's chest. It's not peace. It's a death sentence. A wolf's howl is her truth, her rage, her love song to the moon. When that goes quiet, you are already a ghost. You just haven't stopped breathing yet. My name is Mirella, and for 3 years, I served as the Omega Scribe to Cassius Darkmoor, the Lycan King of the Umbral Wilds. His territory stretched across 3 mountain ranges and a dead sea. His word was winter. His temper was an avalanche. And his eyes, gods. His eyes were the color of molten gold just before it hardens into cruelty. Our world operates on one law. The mate bond is sacred. It is not a suggestion. It is not a preference. When the moon goddess ties 2 souls, their wolves recognize each other before their hearts do. A pull, a scent, a gravity that cannot be denied. For most, it is a blessing. For me, it was a curse wrapped in muscle and monarchy. I felt the bond the moment Cassius returned from the Blood Moon Wars, dragging the corpse of a rival alpha behind his horse. I was 18, covered in ink stains and shame, and he was 200 pounds of feral royalty. Our eyes met across the great hall. His wolf, a beast named Darkscar, surged forward so violently that Cassius's claws pierced the oak throne. My wolf Lyra whimpered. Not in fear, in recognition. Mate. But Cassius Darkmoor does not kneel to instinct. He bends it to his will. For 3 years he ignored the bond. He didn't reject me. That would have been merciful. Instead he watched me, studied me, made me fetch his wine, bind his wounds, warm his study with my silent presence. And then, last week, he announced his engagement to Lady Seraphine Vane, a purebred from the Silver Frost dynasty, political, strategic. Knife twisted slowly into my sternum. You are my scribe, Mirella, he said, not looking at me. Nothing more. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shift and tear his throat out with my teeth. Instead, I bowed. Yes, my king, but here is what he doesn't know. What no one knows. The mate bond is not a chain. It is a current. And every time he denied me, that current turned to lightning in my veins. My body began to betray me. I would wake at night soaked in sweat, my thighs trembling. His name a broken whisper on my lips. I would catch his scent on a letter and feel my knees buckle. I hated him for it. I hated myself more. Tonight, the betrayal becomes physical. The engagement ball is drowning in lantern light and false laughter. Seraphine wears white. I wear a black dress that feels like a shroud. Cassius dances with her, his hand on her waist, and Lyra finally breaks her silence. She doesn't howl. She growls. Low. Deep. Possessive. He hears it. His head snaps toward me across the floor. For one heartbeat, the mask cracks. I see hunger. I see fury. I see the mate bond roaring inside him like a caged wolf. Then he smiles. Cold. Dismissive. And he turns his back. But here is the cliffhanger you won't see coming. As I walk into the garden to weep alone, a hand closes around my wrist. The grip is iron. The heat is infernal. Cassius's breath hits my neck, and his voice is not a king's voice anymore. It is a mate's. You think I don't feel it? He snarls. You think I don't wake up hard every night, smelling your grief on my pillows? You are mine, Mirella. And I am so tired of being a good king. He pulls me into the shadows. And I let him. What happens when the monster finally stops pretending to be a man? Part 2. The taste of ashes and want. He kissed me like he was drowning, and I was the last breath of air before the ocean floor. And then he shoved me away and said, "This changes nothing." My back hit the stone wall of the garden alcove. The engagement ball continued inside, champagne flutes clinking, wolves lying through their teeth. But out here in the dark, Cassius Darkmoor was not a king. He was a disaster wearing skin. His hands bracketed my head. His chest heaved. The scent of him, smoke, cedar, and something raw like thunder flooded my lungs and made my Wolf whimper. I should have pushed him away. I should have reminded him of Seraphine, of duty, of the laws he himself had written. Instead, I grabbed the front of his ceremonial tunic and pulled him down. The kiss was not gentle. It was not romantic. It was a car crash. Teeth and tongue and a growl that vibrated from his chest into mine. He tasted like whiskey and regret. I tasted like tears I hadn't shed yet. His hand found my throat, not squeezing, just owning, and my body arched into him like a flower turning to a poison. "Cassius," I breathed. He shuddered. Actually shuddered. The Lycan King, the monster who had flayed men alive for treason, trembled against my mouth, and then he pulled back. Let me be clear about what happened next. His eyes were wild. His lips were swollen. But his voice was a blade. "This changes nothing." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound was ugly and broken. "You kissed me like you were trying to crawl inside my skin, and you want me to believe nothing changed?" He stepped back. His claws retracted. His face became marble. "I'm bound to Seraphine by contract, by alliance, by the lives of 300 wolves who depend on the Silver Frost army. You are an Omega Scribe, Mirella. Your bloodline is unremarkable. Your wolf is small. The bond between us is an accident of biology, not destiny." Each word was a slap. But here is the context you need. In werewolf society, rank is everything. Alphas rule. Omegas serve. And a Lycan King mating with an Omega is not just scandalous. It is seen as a weakness, a flaw in the goddess's design. Cassius had spent a decade building his reputation on ruthlessness. A love match with a low-born wolf would undo it all. I understood. I understood the politics, the pressure, the weight of his crown. But understanding doesn't stop the bleeding. "Then reject me," I said. My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. "Right now. Say the words. Break the bond. Set me free." His jaw tightened. His wolf flashed behind his eyes gold and grief. "I can't or won't." He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked back toward the light, toward Seraphine, toward the lie of his engagement. I sank to the ground, my back against the cold stone, and I pressed my fingers to my lips. They were already bruising. That's when I felt it, a ripple through the bond. Not his hunger this time. Something worse. Jealousy. Not mine. His. Someone was watching me from the shadows of the garden. A male wolf. Young. Handsome. A beta from a visiting pack. He smiled at me. Slow and knowing, and I realized with sick clarity what Cassius already sensed. This stranger was interested. And through the bond, Cassius's jealousy burned so hot that I felt my own skin blister. The cliffhanger? I smiled back at the beta. Let the king watch. What happens when the monster realizes the prey can choose her own hunter? Part 3. The cage of his own making. He exiled the beta within the hour. Then he came to my room, broke down my door and said, "If you want to destroy me, little wolf, keep smiling at other men." You should have seen his face. Cassius Darkmoor, who had faced down armies without flinching, looked at me across my tiny, Omega quarters like eye, had just stabbed him in the chest with his own claw. The door hung off its hinges. Splinters of oak littered the floor. He stood in the doorway, rain-soaked from the sudden storm outside, and his chest was heaving like he had run here. He probably had. "Explain yourself," he growled. I was sitting on my bed, still in the black dress. I hadn't bothered to change. I hadn't bothered to do anything except replay the baiter's smile in my head. Not because I wanted him, but because I wanted to feel wanted. Cassius had made me feel invisible for 3 years. One stranger's attention had reminded me I still existed. "Explain what?" I asked. That I breathed in the direction of another wolf. "You don't own my lungs, Cassius." He crossed the room in 3 strides. His hand gripped the headboard above my head. His body caged mine. And for the first time, I didn't feel threatened. I felt seen. "You are my mate," he said, low and dangerous. "And you are engaged to another woman. Seraphine means nothing. Then break the contract." "I can't. We had circled this drain 100 times. But tonight was different. Tonight, the jealousy had cracked something open in him. His composure was gone. His royal mask had shattered. What remained was just a wolf, territorial, possessive, and terrified of losing something he had never bothered to claim. I reached up and touched his face. He flinched like my fingers were fire. "Why can't you reject me?" I whispered. He closed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was raw. "Because rejection would kill you. Not physically, but the bond, it would hollow you out. You would feel nothing for anyone ever again. No joy, no desire, no warmth. You would become a shell, Mirella. And I have seen shells. I have made them. I would rather burn my kingdom to ash than do that to you." My heart stopped. This was the analysis you need to understand. Cassius Darkmoor was not cruel because he lacked feeling. He was cruel because he felt too much and had no idea how to carry it. His father had been a tyrant who rejected his own mate for political gain. Cassius had watched his mother fade into a ghost over 20 years. He had sworn never to repeat that horror. But in swearing not to hurt me, he was hurting me slower. "Then choose me," I said. "Not as your scribe. Not as your secret. As your mate. Let the kingdom burn. Let the alliances crumble. I don't care about politics, Cassius. I care about you." His forehead dropped to mine. His breath was uneven. His hand slid from the headboard to my waist, and the heat of his palm burned through the thin fabric of my dress. "You don't understand," he whispered. "Seraphine's father has an army. If I break the engagement, he will declare war. Wolves will die. Children will die. And they will die because I wanted you." "Then let them die for love," I said. "It's a better reason than most wars." He kissed me again. Not like a car crash this time. Like a prayer. Slow. Devastating. His tongue traced my lower lip, and my body finally stopped fighting. Laura surged forward. Darkscar answered. For 10 seconds, we were not a king and an Omega. We were just 2 wolves, finally breathing the same air. Then his phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. And again. Finally, he pulled back and glanced at the screen. His face went grey. "Seraphine," he said. "She's gone into premature heat. Cliffhanger. In werewolf lore, a female in heat has the right to claim her chosen mate by blood. If Seraphine claims Cassius before he rejects her, the bond between him and me will be severed permanently. And she is already on her way to his chambers. What happens when the trap snaps shut on the wolf who thought you was the hunter?" Part 4. The blood claim. She bit him in front of the entire court. His blood dripped onto the marble floor. And my wolf, my quiet, obedient wolf, finally screamed. I ran. I don't remember my feet touching the ground. I only remember the sound of Lyra's howl tearing out of my chest as I burst into the great hall. Seraphine Vane stood in the center of the room, naked and gleaming, Her body wreathed in the steam of her heat. Her eyes were black. Her teeth were red. And Cassius, my Cassius, stood frozen, his forearm extended, a fresh bite mark weeping blood onto the white stone. The court gasped. Whispers erupted like wildfire. She claimed him. The bond is sealed. Poor Omega Scribe. I stopped 10 feet away. My chest heaved. My vision tunneled. Cassius looked at me, and for the first time in 3 years I saw fear in his eyes. Not of Seraphine. Not of war. Fear of losing me. Mirella, he said. His voice cracked. Seraphine turned. Her smile was a serpent's. Ah, the little scribe. Don't worry, dear. You can still polish his boots after the wedding. Something inside me broke. But something else, something older and darker than my grief woke up. You see, I told you I was an Omega. I told you my Wolf was small. What I didn't tell you is that Omegas are not weak. We are suppressed. Generations of pack law have taught us to bow, to serve, to swallow our power until it becomes invisible. But the mate bond doesn't care about rank. And neither, it turns out, does my bloodline. My grandmother was not an Omega. She was a crescent wolf rare, lineage that only awakens under extreme, emotional duress. The crescent wolf does not fight with claws or teeth. She fights with the mind, with command. The first time I felt it was when I was 7, and my father raised his hand to my mother. I looked at him and said, "Stop." He stopped. He couldn't move for an hour. My family buried the incident and never spoke of it again. I had buried it too. Until now. Seraphine stepped toward me. "You should leave before I have you removed." I didn't move. I looked past her at Cassius, at the blood still dripping from his arm, at the bond between us that she thought she had severed. But here is the truth about a mate bond. It cannot be broken by a third party. Seraphine's bite would only hold if Cassius accepted it. And Cassius, cowardly, complicated, broken Cassius, had not accepted anything. His wolf was fighting. "Seraphine," I said. My voice was quiet, but it rang through the hall like a bell. "Remove the claim." She laughed. "You can't command me, Omega." I took a breath. I reached down into the place where Lyra lived, the small, silent wolf, and I found her standing on her hind legs. Her eyes were no longer timid. They were silver. I said, I whispered, and the room's temperature dropped. "Remove the claim." Seraphine's body jerked. Her hand flew to her mouth. The bite mark on Cassius's arm began to push out the blood, reversing the claim like poison expelled from a wound. She screamed. The court gasped. Cassius stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. And then he smiled. Not his cold smile. Not his cruel smile. A real one. Hopeful, hungry. "There you are," he said. The doors of the great hall burst open. Seraphine's father, Alpha Vane, stood there with 50 armed wolves behind him. "You harbored a crescent wolf," he roared. "The treaty is void. This is war." And Cassius stepped in front of me, claws out, and said, "Good. What happens when a king chooses love over peace?" Part 5. The Battle for a Heart. He fought an army for me, but the real war was inside his chest, and I was the only one who could win it. The battle lasted 3 days. I won't describe every slash, every scream, every wolf who fell with my name on their lips. What matters is what happened on the second night, when the fighting paused and Cassius found me in the medic tent, stitching a gash in a pup's leg. He was covered in blood. Most of it wasn't his. "Walk with me," he said. I followed him to the edge of the camp, where the forest met the cliff overlooking the Dead Sea. The moon was full. The waves below were black and silent. "I was going to reject you," he said, not looking at me. "After the ball." I had the words ready. I told myself it was mercy. My hands trembled. "Why didn't you?" He turned. His face was bruised. His lip was split. But his eyes, those molten gold eyes, were soft in a way I had never seen. Because when I imagined my life without you, the world went grey. Not dark, grey. Like every colour had been stolen. And I realised I would rather be a bad king with you than a good king alone. This is the interpretation you need to hold close. Cassius Darkmoor had been raised to believe that love was a liability. His father had used love as a weapon. His mother had died of its absence. He had built his entire identity on being untouchable. And then I came along small, quiet, stubborn, and touched him anyway. I'm not asking you to be perfect, I said. I'm asking you to stop running. He reached out. His fingers brushed my cheek. The crescent wolf gene, he said. You can command anyone. You could command me. Why haven't you? I leaned into his palm. Because I don't want a slave. I want a partner. And you can't force someone to choose you, Cassius. They have to fall on their own. He fell. Not to his knees, he was still. The Lycan King. But something in his shoulders released. The tension he had carried for decades, the weight of his crown, the ghost of his father, the fear of becoming a monster drained out of him like water from a cracked vase. I love you, he said. The words were clumsy, unpracticed. He had never said them to anyone. I know, I whispered. I've always known. You just had to catch up. He kissed me. Not a car crash. Not a prayer. A homecoming. And behind us, the battle resumed. Wolves howled. Steel clashed. But in that moment, on that cliff, there was only us. A horn sounded from the battlefield. Not a war horn. A surrender horn. Alpha Vane's forces were retreating. But as Cassius pulled me toward the camp, Seraphine emerged from the trees alone, dishevelled and holding a silver dagger. If I can't have him, she said, neither can you. She lunged. Not at Cassius. At me. What happens when the blade is faster than the wolf? Part 6. The bond that wouldn't break, the dagger hit my heart. But it was my heart that saved me. Because a mate's love is not a weakness. It is the only armor that never fails. I remember falling. I remember the cold shock of silver in my chest. I remember Cassius's screamer sound I hope no one ever has to hear. Then everything went white. When I woke, I was in his bed. His chambers. His arms. 3 days had passed. The pack healers had done everything they could. But silver poisoning in a crescent wolf is unpredictable. I should have died. I didn't, because Cassius did something no Lycan King had done in 1,000 years. He performed the ritual of shared blood, forbidden ceremony where a mated pair exchanges, not just flesh but soul. He cut his palm. He pressed it to my wound. And he poured every ounce of his life force into mine. The healers said it was suicide. He did it anyway. You could have died, I whispered, my voice a rasp. He pressed his forehead to mine. Then we would have died together. There is no world, Mirella, where I exist without you anymore. The war ended. Alpha Vane, seeing the depth of Cassius's commitment and fearing the wrath of a crescent wolf, withdrew his forces. Seraphine was exiled to the Northern Territories. And Cassius Darkmoor, for the first time in his life, knelt. Not to a council. Not to tradition. To me. Mirella, he said, holding up a ring carved from moonstone and wolf bone. I have been a coward. I have been a king who forgot how to be a man. But I am asking you now, not as your alpha, not as your Lycan King, but as your mate, will you let me love you for the rest of our lives? I pulled him up. I kissed him. And I said, I tried to resist you. My head knew you were dangerous. But my body, my stupid, stubborn, loyal body betrayed me first. And I have never been so grateful for a betrayal in my entire life. Here is what I want you to take from this story. You, the one reading this right now. Love is not supposed to be easy. It is not supposed to be convenient. The mate bond in our world is messy, painful, and often arrives wrapped in the skin of someone who terrifies you. But here is the truth that Cassius and I learned the hard way. Resistance is not rejection. Your body knows before your mind does. Your heart heals before your pride admits it's broken. And sometimes, the person who betrays you the most is the person who is most afraid of losing you. If you are waiting for someone to choose you, stop waiting. Choose yourself first. Then see who rises to meet you. And if you are the one who has been running, stop. The only thing waiting at the finish line of fear is loneliness. Turn around. Go back. Tell them the truth before the dagger falls. Because at the end of every war, every betrayal, every night spent crying into a pillow, love is still the only thing that makes the grey world turn gold again. Now, if this story cracked something open in you, don't just sit there feeling it. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. Like this post if you've ever loved someone you were supposed to hate. And share it with the wolf who needs to hear that it's okay to stop running. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not unworthy. You are just waiting for your king to catch up. And when he does bite back,